Hello out there! This is Wakeangel2K1 coming at you with a review of basically all the new wave of the Jakks Pacific Sonic the Hedgehog figures. Now this review is brought to you by Zeus the Fox, aka my buddy Zach. He's not sponsoring it in any way or anything, it's just that he lives in an area where his stores get stocked with these Sonic figures several weeks at least before mine does, and he's able to send me the figures much sooner than if I was finding them in my own stores. So thanks Zeus, you're a super awesome guy and you're very, very helpful. So the newest wave of the Sonic the Hedgehog figures, of course, has Omega, the renegade super badnik, Silver, the mysterious visitor from the future, and Buzz Bomber, which actually comes to me mint on the card. So, huzzah! Oh, by the way, Buzz Bomber 2.5-inch line. Okay, so we are going to do this one at a time so that I don't make one super long video. So let's get started with the subject of today. Well, the subject of this first video. And of course we're going to start with E123 Omega because I'm pretty sure that's what everybody wants to see. And if I started with the other guys, then people would probably just click off this video and go straight to the Omega one. So yeah, let's try to keep engagement all the way through. Omega comes with the yellow Chaos Emerald, which I don't know why. This isn't the first time the yellow Chaos Emerald has been released. I think one of the Neons, I think Neon Sonic came with it, but whatever. Yellow Chaos Emerald. This means I have 4 of them now. So, there we go. And wow, is Omega ever looking pretty darn great. Let's get a nice zoom in. Like, all of his features are beautifully captured. He looks very much like his game model. There's no real inaccuracies going on here. Solid look front and back. He has his little missiles. He has a little green line in the back. He even has a second Omega symbol on the back of his shoulder. Oh, it's all so well captured. The paint job is really good too. The only thing that I would say is missing is right here on his hip skirt. The arrow is sculpted in, but it's not picked out. I could probably fix that in like 2 seconds. The little tiny arrows are picked out in his forearms. They just didn't put it here. It's funny because here it's not part of the sculpt. It's just tampographed on. Whereas the part that it's sculpted in is not painted. Like, did they only have the budget to paint or sculpt? There's also one weird foible. He has a texture. Like, hear that? It almost looks like this gray patch on his stomach, this little face thing that I'm going to charitably call his nose, and the whole red band that forms the main line of his upper body. It all looks like it was made out of 3D printed plastic. Like, I don't know if they were going for like an industrial texture, but like, this is the only part where it's actually there. Like, all this black part is silky smooth. The forearms are nice and smooth. Like, this textured plastic isn't anywhere else on the figure except for here. And like, I'm wondering why. Like, if it was an aesthetic decision, that's a weird aesthetic decision. And if it's and it leads me to believe that maybe they did a 3D print of the figure but accidentally forgot to smooth it out before making the master mold. And they're like, oh crap, we forgot to smooth out the 3D texturing, the 3D printing texture before we made the master mold. Oh, well, we're not going to spend the money to make more master molds. They're already in the factories. So they just kind of hoped that we wouldn't notice. That's what I'm thinking. Okay, so let's pull back and take a look at the articulation because this figure is beautifully well articulated. Let's start at the ankles. They are on ball joints, so you can get a little bit of side to side and they can rotate all around. The knees get a solid 90-degree bend, and there is no useful thigh swivel. There is a below the knee swivel, but it's really not necessary because the foot already does that. So like they could have in this part where the gray meets the red, they could have put a swivel joint in there to give him like a proper thigh swivel, but they didn't. He does, however, have pin disc hips, so there is range. You saw me rotate his waist, so you do see the waist joint. Although something interesting, the hip skirts are one solid piece. They don't move out of the way. So that means in order to get his hips up, you have to rotate his waist around, because if you go too far, without moving his waist, they will clash into the hip skirts. Now, I don't want to get too high up on my pedestal, but if you would take a look at my custom Omegas, you'll note that I always made sure to articulate those hip skirts so that they wouldn't get in the way of the legs posing. Haha. Okay, yeah, I'm not gonna lie and pretend that my Omega figure is better than theirs, but you know, I have hip skirts and they don't. I have articulated hip skirts, I should say. Okay, so the waist joint is below this belt assembly rather than above it, so this part doesn't move. And he has universal shoulder movement. It rotates around like this, and then there is a pin disc inside, so it can go out. The elbow, because of the shape of the elbow, it doesn't quite reach a 90-degree bend, but it's still a pretty good bend. And it really does look like this is a separate piece. You can actually see where it's connected in, but it doesn't seem to rotate there. So I think that may be a separate piece of plastic, but I don't think it's actually a joint. So I wouldn't try to rotate it because I don't want to break it. It's probably like a square peg. If they had made it a round peg, then he'd have a bicep swivel, but I don't know. They just decided not to give him a bicep swivel. Instead, he has, just like Metal Sonic, a forearm swivel, which isn't necessary because then his wrist is on a ball joint and can move independently. It's actually pretty cool that it has a ball joint because you can actually get some waving stuff in there. But yeah, like this is all just that much more spinning meat. And I kind of was hoping that the hands would be removable. I mean, they probably are. They're probably held on with ball joints. But it would be cool if they were, like, easy to pull off, because then we could hope to get upgrade sets that had, like, his weaponized hands, like the flamethrower or the Gatling gun. I don't know. And then here's a really bizarre thing. His head doesn't move. It's clearly a separate piece of plastic from the rest of his torso, but as you can see, it's not a perfect circle. It's a slight oval shape, so it can't rotate in the setting. His head does not move. And again, my figure has a moving head. Just saying. Yeah, like, still, this is above average levels of articulation for this, the Jakks Pacific Sonic line. After all, Sonic and all the other Mobian characters don't have elbow joints typically, so the fact that he has both elbows and knees is an improvement. Apparently he had to sacrifice his neck to get those elbows, but I think it's a pretty worthy trade. And holy crap, this guy just looks so darn cool! Like, Omega just has a really great design. I'm not gonna be petulant and fault that, because this guy just looks so freaking great. Alright, so I guess you want to see some comparisons with some stuff that you would put Omega next to. So, of course, here he is next to Burnbot from the Sonic Boom line. You know, the robot that kind of resembled him from the first episode of the actual cartoon. What's that? Yeah, you know, Burnbot. They kind of have the same basic silhouette, right? I mean, this guy has much skinnier little arms, but and he kind of has to brace himself because his wheel feet can't stand, but and he has that exploding gimmick, but what? You guys really didn't want to see what Burnbot looked like next to the new E102 Gamma figure? I mean, why not? You got a thing against Burnbot? You don't like Burnbot? Alright, I guess you do want to see him in comparison to something that's a little bit more thematic, like something from the same actual universe as him, right? So here he is with the E102 Gamma custom that I made based off of May and Kirby's Tinkercad model. Yeah, and like here you can actually see what I was mentioning. Like you can see the 3D print texture here, and it's kind of present on this guy too. So like, hey, that isn't an anachronistic 3D print texture. It's actually accurate to the way the alloys on these E100 models actually look. Okay, yeah, like I guess we're done with the joke comparisons. Let's get into the actual stuff that this thing will be displayed with by the majority of people. So here he is with his teammate Shadow the Hedgehog and his creator, Dr. Eggman. So he is a good solid head taller than Shadow, which does jive in how he's depicted in most media with the regular Sonic cast. Although he's just about eye to eye with Dr. Eggman, which is okay, I suppose, but is it just me, or is it that Omega should be shorter than Dr. Eggman? Like if Omega's a head taller than most of the Sonic cast, then Eggman should be a head taller than Omega. At least that's how I always figured it. But if anything, that means that Eggman is undersized, not this guy being oversized, because, as I said, this scaling actually works. I've heard that some people wanted to put this Omega next to Jazzwares figures, because then he looks suitably tall, but here's a 2.5-inch figure, and I don't know, that is way tiny. Like, remember in Sonic Heroes when, like, this thing would open up and there'd be a Chaos Emerald inside, and then Shadow would reach in and pull that emerald out to do their Team Blast? Like he can do that, like, in this scale. Like, he can reach up and reach into there without it looking too awkward. But this guy, he like, yeah, see? So yeah, I do believe that in terms of scaling, this works. Like, this is a good size Omega figure. They made him sufficiently big and wide and impressive and imposing, and he looks good in a Team Dark display. Now all we need is to have Rouge the Bat, and we'll have the complete team, which will be the first time that we've ever had the complete team represented as official action figures. Although it is worth noting that my Jazzwares scaled Rouge figure can totally sit in his big old hand. Sorry about that, Ramiro. She will be packed up and ready to go to you very soon. I just figured I'd use her real quick for this one shot because it's so hilarious. And that is my review of E123 Omega. On a final note, I would like to say that I'm pretty sure the bulk of this guy might explain the waves before and after him. The wave before him had Amy Rose as the only new mold and cheap repaints of the other three characters. And the wave after him, once again, is only going to have one new mold, Rouge the Bat. And I think that was so that they could save up the budget on making new tooling so that they could have this much larger, wider figure. Like, he's bigger, he has more parts. I have a feeling that this was a more expensive figure for Jakks Pacific to make, but it still sells at the same retail point of like $10. That's awesome. Like, I totally respect what Jakks Pacific is doing now. Like, I know I said a lot of things about them when they put Amy Rose as like the sole figure in her wave, but like if that weird Amy being the only new figure wave was the cost of getting this guy out there, then fine. Jakks Pacific, you are forgiven. This is Wakeangel 2001. Moving on to the next figure. See you next time.